All right, everybody. We're going to do the last major thing for the class, and that's going to be the actual integration of your CG into your plate. All right, so we're going to do this all in Nuke, so um, let's go ahead and get started. So I'll kind of try and touch on things about Nuke as I go, but if you have any questions or anything, shoot me an email. Let me know if I breezed over something too quick, and I can explain it a little better. All right. So as I explained in the Nuke overview, you have your viewer, you have your node graph, and you have your properties window. Um, so I'll be kind of blowing through all this stuff fairly quick. I'll try and explain as I go. But first thing we need to do before we get started is we got to have footage. Well, there's two things you got to do. One is you need to set your project. I have already set this one, but remember to set your project settings. So hit S with your mouse over the node viewer. And when you do, you'll get all this stuff. The one we're worried about is the full-size format. So we want to make sure you pick HD 1080. So this is the first thing you want to do before you do anything. You don't want to be in the middle of it and then realize, oh, I never set my project. Because it can cause problems depending on what it is you're doing in your comp. So go ahead and set that 1920 by 1080. Frames per second should be 24 because that's what I shot it at. All right. So I'm going to read in my footage. So I need to go find my plate. So let me go up a couple here and let me go find my sequence. So I have a portfolio 3 design, and I have my nuke, and I have my sequence. So this is my sequence right here. All right, that's my sequence. You guys go grab yours wherever you put yours. That's where mine's at. So I'll open this. So this is my backplate. All right, so this is the image that I have. All right, so now I need to put my CG on top of this sequence. So now I'll read in my CG. So I'll have this deselected, hit R to read, and then I will go back to my images folder, which is, oh, so I got goofed with my thing here. So I need to go portfolio 3, there you are, images. All right, and so I'm going to grab my holdouts, which are right here. All right, open that up. So there is my image sequence. So I have my images and I have my sequence. Now I need these two together. All right. So the first thing I'll do is I will go ahead and just put my CG over the plate. All right. So the way you do that is you have two options. One is I can just have nothing selected and hit Tab and type merge. All right. So merge is where you're merging two images together. All right. So I'll just type merge by itself and hit enter. All right. Oop, missed it. Hang on. That was a deep merge. M-E-R-G-E. Oh, you have to go down one. Merge. All right. So do that. Or the other option you have, oh, here, let me hit enter on that. So then I get a merge. And so if I want to put an image on, I put one image over the top of the other. All right. Now, the order does matter. The way you can remember it is you have two inputs. You have an A and a B. It's always A first, then B. That's how the merge is going to work. All right. So I want to merge A over B. So A is going to go on top of B. So this is going to be A. All right. It doesn't matter which side this is on because I can take A and plug it in over here, and then take B and plug it in over here. I can also flip-flop these. I can move this over here and move this around. And now it's A over B. So the A and B are on the same side. If I went the other way, like say I accidentally plugged in the wrong ones. So let's say you're doing this and you did this wrong. So you did A over B, all right? And you're like, oh, well, it's A over B. Here, let me plug it in right first. So A over B. Let me show you what it looks like. So I have this merge and I'll view it. So I have my CG over my live action, all right? It's A over B, working. Let's say you did it wrong. Let's say you're plugging it in, you accidentally put the CG on B and the plate on A. Well, now you can't see the CG. You actually can. It's there, sort of. See, there's this weird little outline happening here. The reason that's happening is because the plate doesn't have an alpha. So the camera doesn't record the alpha. So it's only recording RGB. So even though I have an EXR that technically has an alpha channel, it's empty. There's nothing in it. So when you try and put something with no alpha over the top of another one, it's actually going to double up the color. And so I'm kind of sort of seeing the bolts and all that stuff through here. It's transparent. So let's say you did this and it's backwards. Well, you don't have to do what I was doing where I unplug A and unplug B and then flip them over. All I got to do is select the merge node, and I can do a Shift X. When you do a Shift X, that tells it to cross the inputs. So when I do, let me zoom in, when I do Shift X, watch what it does. Floop, flips. So now that's A and this is B. So that can fix it. All right. So now I have my CG over my live action. All right. So to reiterate real quick, read in your CG, read in your plate, take the CG and merge it with being an A over B, which is the plate. A goes to the CG, B goes to the plate. All right. So now I have my CG sitting on the plate. Now this was a render from the same camera, or this was, and so when I scrub my timeline, your CG should be sitting right there on the table, and it should look fine. Now I will say that when I was doing this render, this particular one, I did this on purpose. It looked fine whenever I was rendering it in my 3D view, but when I bring it into Nuke and actually see it on top of the plate, I realize I may have been a little dark in my lighting. And so this is why rendering to EXRs is so important. EXRs are float space files, so this allows me some leeway into really kind of fixing my color. So this is obviously too dark. All right. So what I need to do is I need to color grade this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just grade this in a way where at least the brightness value is right. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color correct the CG. Now I've merged this, but I can insert my own stuff in between. So what I need to do is I need to fix my CG from this point. Like I don't want to try and color correct it here at this point. Because if I try and color correct it here, I'd say, oh, my CG is too dark. I can go ahead and do a color grade. I can be like, all right, let's gamma this up a little bit, and I do this push. Well, notice what's happening to my plate. My plate's getting bright too. All right. So what I want to do is not do the entire plate. So what I want to do is color grade just the CG before it merges. All right. So I just go up here and I'll hit C. So color grade is C, color grade is G, so I'm going to hit G. And so now when I do my color grade and I do my gamma, notice what happens. It only does the CG. All right. So now I can go ahead and be like, all right, let's get this to the right color. So I'll go ahead and just get this guy a push and kind of get it up close to the color that I want. All right. Now you're going to notice that the black areas in there are kind of pushing a little too much. So I'm getting a little too much of this, but this white value is getting there. All right. So with my color grade, my gamma, what the gamma does is gamma adjusts midtones. So anything that's really bright doesn't get brighter. Anything that's really dark doesn't get darker. It is pushing my grays though. So there was a dark gray that almost looked black if I set my gamma back to 1. It looks almost black, but it's not. It's actually gray because it's catching some specular light. And so I can push this gamma up to adjust that. All right. So how do I fix this? Well, I can do this with the grade. All right. So anytime I am doing adding CG into a shot, what you want to do is we do what's known as a gamma slam. All right. And I can do this with the color grade. The gamma slam allows me to adjust my black and white point. The biggest problem we have with CG is when you add it is it's too clean and your colors go too bright and too dark. And that's what makes CG look fake when you drop it into a plate. And so I try and fix it with lighting first. I try and light it right from the beginning. I'm a little off on my lighting, so I could have boosted my light a little bit. So I'll try and gamma this to be roughly where I need it to be. I can also do a color correct. So let me disable the grade. So you disable a node by hitting D. I can also try doing a color correct. So I'll just hit C. That's a color correct. And so what I need to do is I need to take my midtones and boost those up. So I'll take my gamma on my midtones and push that up. And notice that I can push now my mids up and it leaves the black area dark. All right. It's only doing the mids. So it's looking for values in the 0.2, 0.3 range, and it allows me to just adjust those. It doesn't affect highlights. It doesn't affect the really dark areas. If I want to affect my dark areas, I would go to the shadows. So now I can go to the shadows and gamma that. See how it pushes just the black areas? Only where there's shadow. So it's any color value that's below like 0.1. It's going to adjust that and not adjust any color values that go above that. All right, so now I can adjust the black areas individually. Highlights are up here, like anything like, let me find one. It's probably going to be like here. So if I go to my highlights and do a gamma, you can see it here. Let me zoom in on it. So when I adjust this highlight, see how it's moving it? So only a value that's above like 0.8. So if I don't gamma that, if I put my mouse over it, see what it is. It is right at around 0.8. It's just barely hitting it. So 0.8 is cut off. All right. And so this gives me fine control over just the overall color. All right. But what we do is we do what's called a gamma slam to get this to work. I'm going to turn my grade back on. And actually, I'll delete it. I'll just delete the grade. I'll put a grade after the color correct. All right. So when you're integrating CG, I call this Joe's Holy Trinity. It's the three things you do to CG. It's 3 nodes that you do to the CG before you layer it on the plate. First one is you got to get the color right. All right. We're basically adding in what happens when you have a camera in the scene and what happens physically when light comes in. First thing is color comes off the surface. So we need to fix the color first. So we'll go in and we will look at our CG. I'll do a gamma slam. So what a gamma slam is up here on top of the viewer, you have these 2 sliders. All right. You have the what's called the f-stop, which is an exposure. So I can do an exposure slam. But this isn't what I want, because exposure is actually jacking up everything. It's affecting the darks and the lights and everything. All right. So I don't want to do that. So to put everything back to default, you just click the number. Boom. It takes it back to F8. So this is f-stop of 8, which is a default for the way people see things. So it's basically a gain is what it is. All right. Over here we have gamma. It looks like a Y, but it's actually the gamma symbol. That's actually a mathematical symbol. And a gamma is an algorithm they use to adjust values that are between 0 and 1. But it doesn't affect anything that's 0, and it doesn't affect anything that's 1 or above. 0 or below or 1 or above. It doesn't affect any of those. It only affects the values from 0 to 1. All right? Or between 0 and 1. And as you get closer to 0 and closer to 1, it affects them less and less. All right? So what I want to do is I want to slide my gamma slider. And when we do a gamma slam, first thing I do is I'll slam down. So I'll take my gamma and I'll slam it down. And what I'm looking for is there anywhere where the CG is changing faster than the background? All right. And so right now I can tell, even on my highlights, it's kind of getting a little dark a little quick, because I got even just a white box back here and it's brighter than my CG. So I need to fix that. All right. So I have a couple options. One is I can adjust my white point. So the white point is the bright values. And so when I bring this down, I'm adjusting where on my color curve. This is just like in Photoshop when you have the levels tool and you have the black and white values, except Nuke will allow me to push the white point beyond the border. All right, so I can take my white point, I can adjust it up and down. So if I go up, what it's saying is pure white is the furthest right of the thing. But if I keep pushing the white point higher, what it's doing is it's allowing the white point to go have a wider range. And 1 now is being pushed backwards. So 1 gets remapped to 1.16. So it has to be 1.16 before it turns pure white. So I'm going the wrong way. I'm making my brights too dark. So I got to go the other way. So what I'll do is I'll start pushing this down. And what I'll do is I want to get my bright specular highlights to be kind of like any other bright specular highlights. There's a white bottle up there, and this is metal. So this should be reasonably close. So I'm going to push my white point down a little bit until that starts to show a little more like metal. And I get the little white specular highlight showing up here on the CG. So now I'm getting my little white value showing up. A little more like, let me find something metal, like something like this, or like this bottle. See these specular highlights? I should be getting something like that on here, and I am. And so now I am, all right? So I'll take my gamma back up, and I'll go back to 1 for a second. So I need to see like how bad it's gotten. So I may have overgraded. My color grade may be a little off, so I'm going to have to knock that down a little bit. So on my grade, on my color correct, I may have to push this back a little bit. So I may have gammaed too far. So I'm going to take my gamma down a little bit. So it keeps the bright value in there, keeps that highlight. So I just affected my mid. So the highlight's still there. I can double check it by going back. And yeah, my highlight's still there. See how the gamma doesn't affect that highlight? That highlight stays bright. So now I may have gone a little too far with that. So I was a little worried about that when I started seeing this coming up. So I'll bring this back down a little bit. All right. And then I'll hit my gamma back to normal. So just click the Y and it takes it back to 1. So now I'm starting to get something that looks a little better. So now I slam the other way. And this is the one that a lot is more common that I see. And that is my lows are too low, like it's too black. And actually what I think has happened, and it's because of the color correct, when I slam up, notice how like this is staying really dark. This is in my plate. So these areas are staying really dark. But my dark areas here are getting too bright. So what I've discovered is my color correct that I was using to make it look like what I thought was right at the beginning is actually not right. So what I do is I can go now and take my shadow gamma and pull that back. Because I need these dark areas of the hoses to be more like the other black objects in the scene. So I'll bring this black point down. All right. So I need to pull this gamma back in the shadows and darken those up. So now I'm getting them to be more like the other black areas of the shot. All right. Let's get that a little bit closer. Just kind of nudge it. All right. And that was for my color correct. If I want, I can disable this color correct. So now I have my CG as it was. So now I can go to my grade and fix my black point. So my black point's off. So let me fix that. Ooh, why is it doing the background? Oh, because I'm going below 0. I'm going the wrong way anyway. So I need to push this black point back a little bit. So I can fix it there. So now I'm getting this a little closer. And so now I'll go back to normal. All right. So now I'm getting something that looks a little bit better. I can turn my color correct back on. And let me go back to the gamma up. Now you'll see me do this a lot. I'll bounce it around quite a bit. So I can give this a little push. And I'll use this color correct in the shadow area to gamma back just a little farther. See how the color correct gives me a finer control. So bring this down a little bit. All right, so now I'm getting something a little bit better. And so now I'll go back to normal. And you just back and forth with that until you get it looking like how you want. So now see how color-wise it's starting to match a little better. All right. So this is the first step. Color is your first thing. I have 2 nodes in here. I could have gotten away with doing just 1, but I wanted that fine control in there. All right. And you can kind of give it a scrub. Don't trust just one camera angle. Kind of rotate it around and look at it from different angles. All right. It looks like it's working. You know, it's got that kind of beige look to it. All right. So bring this back. That looks like it's working pretty well. So the next thing we need to do is when you see something in real life shot with a camera, the color gets generated by the object. It comes in. First thing it does is it's the lens. Now you will notice as I zoom in on this, see how sharp the CG is as opposed to the objects in the scene. See how the objects are a little bit out of focus, and that's because no camera is perfectly in focus. I don't care how big a production you're on. When you look through a camera, it's going to be very slightly out of focus. Sometimes it changes focus. See how this is kind of blurry, but then as soon as you hit my CG, holy cow! Look how clean that is. All right, you can see the difference here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to match the focus of the camera. And so because nothing's perfectly in focus, what you want to use is a defocus node. So with the grade selected, the next thing you want to do is defocus. So I'll hit tab, I'll hit DEF. All right, defocus, and that's considered a filter. And so I'll go ahead and hit enter on this. So now I have a defocus, and the default is 1 full pixel. Now I don't know that this is a full pixel, but holy moly, that looks pretty close. I'll probably fiddle with it a little bit and see, because I need to kind of pan around and look at it from everywhere and just kind of compare it. So I may have gone a little too far. See the difference here? So I'm getting a little bit of a rack focus back here. So I don't need to go quite that far. I'm going to use something that's closer. So I'll compare focus with this guy. And so my defocus isn't 1. It's going to be a little less than that. Obviously, I don't want to jack it up too high because then it's a mess. So I'll go backwards. So it's a little less than 1. I'll probably say about half, about 0.45. Yeah, something like that. And that may still be a little too fuzzy. About 0.3, 0.25. That's getting a little closer. And when I peel back and if I look at it at 1:1, notice it looks a little bit better. It's starting to kind of come together. You know, if I zoom in on it a little bit, you can kind of see now it's got that little bit of a camera feel to it, that little bit of a defocus. All right. So the defocus is different than a blur. Some people think, oh, well, I'll just blur it. Well, you don't want to blur it. The reason why is I'll disable this for a second. Let me do a blur. So I'll hit B and do a blur. Some people will do this, and they'll go in and be like, okay, I need to defocus the camera, and they'll go in and let me zoom in on it, and I'll show you. And they'll say, okay, I'm blurring it. All right. And so they blur, and they blur. And what happens is it just makes it fuzzy. It's not actually defocusing anything. It's just blurring it. All right. And the reason it doesn't work is if I take this and I blur it, this is what happens. Now it's just blurry. Now this makes my head hurt because I think there's something on my glasses. The difference between a blur and a defocus is this. If I disable my blur and I go back to my defocus, let's say I jack this up really high and I do the same thing. Notice the difference between the defocus, and it does take in a minute. Where's my... Oh, I'm on the blur node, sorry. The defocus. So I'll start defocusing. And notice what it does. See how it's blurry, but notice how I'm getting these little circles and highlights? That's what a camera does. So this is replicating the depth of field. And you know how you get those little bokeh effects of really bright spots? I may have gone a little too far here. Let me pull back. You can see a little better if it's not quite so fuzzed. It's easier to have it up here. Yeah, there it is. So there's little circles going on. That's what the defocus does. It's doing like kind of like a convolve, sort of. It's mimicking the act of a camera defocusing something. So it's not just making it blurry, it's defocusing it. So if you have a scene that has really little tiny bright white spots, those white spots will turn into like those bokeh circles. Okay? So that's a defocus. So I'm going to set my defocus back to where I was with like 0.25-ish, 0.3, something like that. We'll go with 0.3. All right. So that looks a little more real. All right. And so now I have my CG in. So let me get rid of this blur here. Clean my thing up. The last thing we need to do is grain. Now this particular shot probably doesn't have much in the way of grain. It was originally shot in 4K. And I down-res to 1080. So by the down-res actually gets rid of the grain. So generally what I'll do is I'll zoom in on somewhere that's kind of got a plain background to it, preferably something kind of a whitish gray. And I'll gamma down and up just to kind of have a look. A little bit. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of step through the frame, so you can use your arrow keys for this. There is a little bit of grain in there. You can kind of see it. It's hard to tell if it's grain or if that's the wall. But there's a little bit in there. And what I do is I look at the red channel. So to look at the different channels, R, G, and B, those are red, green, and blue. And then A is the alpha channel. All right. So this is the red channel. There, let me back out here. Let me find something red. So this is red. So if I look at the red channel, there's the red. If I look at the green channel, see how there's no green in this, so it turns black. And then the blue channel. All right. So, oh, here we go. Red and blue. So here's the blue channel. Wow, that's blue, so that's showing up. Here's the red channel. No red there, so it turns black. Green, no green, but anything white will show up as gray. All right. So that's your RGB. So what I'll do is I'll go to somewhere that's flat like this, zoom in on it, and look at the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel. And I'll kind of like nudge through and look for grain. Now I'm not really seeing much in the way of grain here, so I'm not actually going to do it. But if there were grain, what happens is, I gamma this around to kind of see the grain a little bit better. And what you can do is you can drop in a grain node. And so you do tab, and do grain. All right? And when I do that, what this will do is this gives me a film grain look. All right? And I'll turn off apply only through alpha. And so red channel. And so if I increase my intensity, so I have red. What am I doing? Where is it? Why is my grain not showing up? Let me look at my alpha channel real quick. So I don't have an alpha. Oh, it's only going to do. Oh yeah, it's doing the grain on the CG object. I'm on the CG side. So if I want to see this, we do what I call grain matching. And so what I do is I will take a constant. So I'll do tab and I'll type constant. And on my constant, what I can do is I can select a color. So anytime you have a color wheel in Nuke, you can select the color swatch. And what this will do is this will give you an eyedropper. Now, when this eyedropper is active, what happens is if I command click somewhere, so I want to sample, say, this wall. So I'll zoom in and I'll hold down command and I'll click. Now my constant will now turn that color. I'll do command shift and drag, I can select a region. And it's going to average all of the color inside this box and create a constant color of that color. All right, so now whenever I look at this, that's the constant. And then when I look at this, I'll do this as 2, this is the wall. So 1, 2, so pretty close. All right. And so now what I can do is I'll turn this eyedropper off and I'll just command click and command click again. Command right click. Command right click will get rid of that little red thing. All right. What I can do is I can select the constant, I can select the read, and I hit W. And what this will do is this will allow me, where's that? Let me find it. It'll create a wipe between the two. All right. So, oh, I have them both selected. I need the read one. And so now what this does is this allows me to wipe between two. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and I'm going to look at this wall. So I'm going to wipe between the two walls. And I'm going to take this grain node. Let me delete it and make a new one. All right. I don't have an alpha on there, so I'll turn this off. All right. So what I do is I will zoom in and I will start looking at stuff. So what I'll do is on the intensity, I'm going to shut all these off. All right. So the first thing I need to do is kind of match the grain. Now there's not a lot here, so it's going to be very light. But I'll start with each individual channel. So I'll do red. I'll look at the red channel. And what I do is I bring up the value until I can see it. So see how I can see the grain, and so I'll tone it back until it's kind of roughly that level. All right. Then I also need to do size. So when I do size, I will push it a little higher just so I can get the size right. So the size is wrong. The size is for the Kodak whatever value it has is sitting there. And so I'll turn this value up. So I just need to match the grain size. So I'll go to about a 4-ish, maybe. Yeah, about a 4. And then I'll set my intensity back and roll this back. All right. And then I'll do the same thing with the green channel. So I'll hit green. So there's my green noise. And so now I'll go into the green intensity and turn this up until I can see it. Adjust the size. The size looks a little bit bigger here. It's right around 4.8-ish, maybe. A little bigger. Yeah. Around 4.2. It's probably going to be about 4. It's HD, so they're probably all going to be 4. And I'll just pull my intensity back. Get it to match. So you can kind of see that. I can gamma this so we can see it a little better. You can kind of see that noise in there. If I gamma up, you can't see it at all, so I have to keep the gamma kind of down. All right, and then I'll do blue. Here's my blue channel. So I'll do the same thing. I'll go in, turn the intensity up on blue until I can see it. And then I'll do my size. It's going to be 4. So it's about 4. All right, so that's my red and green and blue. So now zoom out. So I have green. So now I can take this node, I can disconnect this. I can drop this grain node right here. Pop. So now I'll set my gamma back and I'll turn off the wipe. So I'll hit the W, get rid of the wipe. And now I'll view the merge and I'll hit R a couple times and it'll go back. And so now I have a little bit of grain in here that adds to the scene. All right, if it gets to be too much, I can go in and fix it. I can just turn down the amount of grain. But now I have grain in there. And that's what I call Joe's Holy Trinity. It's color correct, defocus, and grain. You do it in the order in which things happen in the camera. Color comes off the surface, lens defocuses it, and then it hits the sensor and it creates grain. And that's the order that you have to do this. You can't do it in the other order. Like if I put the grain before, what happens is my defocus will blur the grain, and that's not what happens. The grain is the last thing to occur. All right? And so now I have my CG object integrated into my shot. All right? And you can hit play. It takes a little bit. You can see how things start to slow down a little bit. It takes a little longer for it to play out. And so now I have my CG layered over the top. All right. I have one more video because I am missing one thing, and that's going to be the shadow on the ground. But this video has gone on long enough. I will do a separate video for the shadow on the table. All right.